This is the second part of the series titled Greatest Rascals of Greek Mythology. Probably the most well-known punishment story of classical Greek mythology is the damnation of Tantalus. Tantalus' name originally meant daring or audacious, however the outcome of his wickedness labeled him as something different. The word tantalized or tantalizing probably sounds familiar to you. It is an adjective referring to a feeling that is tormenting or teasing with the sight or promise of something unobtainable. In light of the story I am about to tell you, you will learn how the etymology of the word tantalizing bears relevance to the meaning of the word today. Tantalus was the king of Lydia, which was a state located in the western part of Asia Minor. His country was excessively rich, and he married one of the water nymphs, Dione, who later suckled Dionysus. Apart from being extremely wealthy, he was frequently invited to the celestial palace of Zeus, yet he was not too adept at keeping his mouth shut when he came back to his own kingdom. He occasionally gossiped a bit about the special victuals of the Olympians and stole a bit of nectar and ambrosia once in a while. However, this was not the crime for which he was so cruelly punished. As a well-off and decent fellow, he wanted to reciprocate the generosity of the gods, so he duly invited them to his own land, where he presented them with a fairly special meal. He dissected the body of his own son Pelops, put his body parts into a large cauldron, and boiled them until they softened. Apart from providing the divinities with some special food, Tantalus was also curious whether these allegedly wise Olympians will notice his cunning. Of course, divine power enabled our beloved deities to sense the mischief of Tantalus, except for Demeter, whose daughter Persephone has just been abducted by the ruler of the underworld, Hades. She was so overpowered by her disappointment at the unredeemable fate of her daughter that she got quite oblivious of herself and bit one chunk out from the shoulder of Pelops. Zeus, upon noticing it, took action immediately. He gathered one of the Fates, Clotho, who was responsible for measuring out how long mortals should live. Clotho had the power to reverse the process the body of Pelops underwent, so she gathered the body parts, put them back into the cauldron, and remolded his body. Demeter, upon learning that she fell victim to cannibalism, felt terrible and instantly wanted to make up for her oblivion. He asked Hephaestus, the smith of the Olympians, to mold a shoulder blade out of ivory, which he duly did. Clotho attached this to the unintentionally mutilated body, and afterwards Rhea, the great goddess, breathed spirit into the lifeless Pelops, as a result of which he came back into life. The young and athletic Pelops possibly would be regarded as a handsome fellow even nowadays, for whose love girls would go crazy. Yet in the original story it was not girls who were infatuated by the pleasing looks of his, but the god of the seas, Poseidon, who abducted him, and the two became lovers for a while. But how does the notion of divine punishment is relevant here? Zeus was full of divine wrath upon learning the mischief of Tantalus, so he devised a fairly cruel form of punishment for him. According to the myth, Zeus dispatched him down to Tartarus, the deep abyss which was the prison of the Titans. Here Tantalus had to stand in the middle of a lake, the water caressing his chin, and he was constantly tortured by an intensive feeling of thirst. Yet any time he attempted to bend down and quench it, the water suddenly disappeared. There was a bowl above his head, full of delicious fruits, but whenever he stretched his hands to pick one, a gust of wind moved the bath upwards, making it impossible for him to eat. One aspect of classical Greek mythology is that each myth has various versions deriving from various tribes, so we can create our own hodgepodge of stories each time we familiarize ourselves with a new variation. According to some, instead of being dispatched down to Tartarus and suffering from thirst and hunger, Zeus simply turned the mountain Sipylus and Tantalus, which crushed him, so he perished immediately. Now you possibly understand how the story of Tantalus explains the meaning of the word tantalizing. Also, it must be tantalizing for all of you to wait until the next episode of this podcast is released. But until then, stay tuned. Thank you for listening to me. Have a nice day. Bye bye.